So as I said, my name is Simon Wilson. I'm the course director of the program at the moment, Postgraduate Certificate in Statistics Online. So this program has been running for many years, right? In fact, since the 70s, but last year became a fully online program, sort of properly online program, as I call it. Obviously, a couple of years prior to that, we'd been forced online. Prior to that, it had been a face-to-face program. You came into college 2 evenings a week. Okay. So let me, okay. Now, perhaps can, now, okay, sorry, I have a few technical difficulties here getting the slides to change. Okay, so the first thing to ask is this course for me? So that's an important question before you apply. So first of all, to say it's an introductory course in statistics. So we really don't assume that you've done any statistics before. It's a part-time program, and our two students with us today can talk a little bit about how much time they feel it takes each week to complete it. The sort of people who come onto the program, well, they're often people who think that using common statistical techniques and interpreting their output is useful in their career and somehow. So in your career, you have some data analysis, some questions to answer using data, and these methods might be useful to help you with that. We have quite a lot of researchers on the program, typically PhD students, and they see that they will need to do some statistical analysis in their research, for example, in social sciences, where they might have a survey. And so this program works as getting you to a certain level of knowledge, or that allows you to do that. And then also people who are thinking about a career change into what's known as data science. So perhaps you're already in a career that's quite quantitative. You have a background in, say, engineering or science, and you're thinking of changing career to this, and this would be sort of a first step to do that. So those are the sorts of people who typically take our program. As I mentioned, it's a fully online course, but the content is very similar to what we used to do when it was face-to-face on the college campus. So just for completeness, there'll be no need to come onto Trinity campus for any aspect of the course, classes, labs, or any exam. So of course, the big advantages of that are that if you don't have access to our campus, so essentially if you don't live in Dublin, you can still take the course, and allows you somewhat more flexibility in when you study for the course during the week. You don't have to come to the campus at certain hours of the week to attend the classes. How does the course work, online course work? So what happens is that Trinity College, like most universities, has an online teaching system called, in our case, it's called Blackboard. And if you don't already have one, you'll be given a Trinity College username and ID that allows you to log into that system. And then each week of teaching term, new material is released onto Blackboard that you can look at and work through. So the sorts of things that would include our reading material, there's a video lecture, some homework, maybe a short quiz to test your knowledge, that kind of thing. For this program, that material is usually released on the Friday before each week in the teaching semester. Then near the end of that week, in our case, Thursday has been the day we've done, there'll be a live tutorial with Trinity College teaching staff, typically lasting an hour. In this year, that has been at 5:30 or 6 o'clock Irish time in the evening. At least one of the class is often split up into smaller groups, and each of those has their own tutorial, but at least one of those will be recorded each week. So you can access it later if you happen to miss the live tutorial. Then your grade for each module in the program is determined through a mixture of homeworks, perhaps projects, and maybe a take-home exam in some cases. Then your overall course grade comes from a weighted average of the marks of those modules. So you get a final percentage, which translates into pass or fail. This is a screenshot of the Blackboard system. So this shows actually the first session, so what would appear on the Friday before the start of the first week of term in September. And you can see the session is divided up into several sections. There's an introduction, which is a very short video. Prepare, which is typically read this, look at this material, think about this. Study section is the main video presentation, the lecture, if you like. Apply, reflect, and recall are typically then applying what you've just learned to some situation. And then the extend section at the end is kind of extra material. So if you're really interested in this topic, here are some more resources that you can go and look at before finally the session tutorial. In this case, it was at 6 p.m. And that's a link that sets you through to that tutorial. I think, so I'm getting some chatty to say the slides have not advanced past slide 3. Okay, so let me stop sharing and I'll see if I can resync things. Okay, what I might do is it appears to be an issue between my display and my laptop. So what I'm going to do is disconnect this.
Okay, everyone. So let's try again. Okay, one moment. Okay, apologies everyone. I have some small technical difficulties here, which I think I've nearly resolved. Okay, so let's try and share again. Okay. Okay, let me go back one slide, as I think things appear to have frozen on slide 5. Okay, so let me just go back and maybe go through slide 4 again very quickly. Okay, great. So hopefully everyone can see slide 4 now. So we'll start from there. Okay, so as I said, each week, the way this works is each week a new set of material is released onto this online teaching system, Blackboard, that you have access to, and you work through that material. And that happens on the Friday of each week before a week in the teaching semester. Then near the end of that week, 6 days later, if you like, on the Thursday, there'll be a live tutorial with our teaching staff where you can ask questions, go through homework or the video lecture or whatever it happens to be. We typically split students up into smaller groups for that and run 2 or 3 of those tutorials, of which at least one is recorded for you to have access to later if you miss the live tutorial. The whole course is split up into 4 modules actually at the moment, and you'll be examined in each. And then your final grade for the program is a weighted combination of the marks for each of those. So this is what Blackboard looks like when you access it. So this is the material for actually the first session of the first week of the program. It's all on data summaries and graphs. And you'll see the work is split up into several sections. There's a short introductory video, a prepare section, gives you typically some material to read. Then the study section is the main video presentation, the lecture. Apply, reflect, and the recall sections will ask you to apply that knowledge you've learned to some situation, maybe a short quiz to test your knowledge, that kind of thing. And then the extend section is, if you're really interested in this topic, there's further resources that you can look at or read and so on. And then very end, there's a link to the live tutorial for that session. So that sort of just repeats each week of the program throughout the year. So for example, as I said, the study element will include a video lecture. This is just the first slide of the video lecture. You see it's about half an hour, which is fairly typical. And you can go through that. Of course, you can stop it, go back. You can also download a PDF of it or just an audio recording, actually, of the voiceover if you're in the car or something and want to listen to it. These are the modules in the program by semester. So currently there are 4 modules in the first semester, which is 12 weeks, running from sort of mid-September to early December. There's a module which we call an introductory module, and this covers sort of the basics behind statistical methods and some of the simple methods we saw the first session examples on visualizing data, graphing data. Then the second module, implementing statistical methods in R, we look at a programming system that we use to implement these methods called R, just the letter R, and you learn about how to use that. Then in the second semester, there are 2 modules again, and these are on 2 important sets of techniques in statistics. One is regression, and the second is something called experimental design. Currently, there are no elective modules, so there's no choice in what you can do by the program. That's something we hope to change in the future, but for the moment, there are no elective modules, unfortunately. Okay, what do you need to get into the program? So you just need any bachelor's degree, any first degree, and we don't really care about the subject at all. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is you have to have some knowledge of mathematics. So this program is not designed to be a technical statistical program at all, but even with that, you certainly do need a certain level of mathematics for it to make sense. And what we generally say is if you studied mathematics all the way through to the end of high school, or if in your degree program you did a first year introduction to mathematics module at some point, that's going to be enough. So those of you in Ireland, if you have leaving cert maths, you're good. If you're in UK A-level or equivalent elsewhere, that kind of thing. So that is important. We thankfully have quite a low dropout rate in this program, but the people that do drop out tend to drop out because they underestimated the mathematics that they needed, and they didn't really have quite enough to get everything out of the program that they could have. Okay, how much does it cost? So the fees are not confirmed, but I don't think they're going to change very much at all. But this year they were €3,000 if you were a European Union student, 7,000 if you were a non-European Union student. And then if you're already registered or going to be registered for another full-time program in Trinity College, and this is almost always a PhD, then the course is free for you. So what will happen is you will register for that other program, like the PhD, and once you've done that, you would then be able to register for this program into the system, and you won't receive a bill. Basically, it'll be free. How do you get the lower fee, the EU student fee of 3,000? It's based on a slightly complicated rule of residency for study or work in the European Union, and not on your passport, right? So the details, the exact details for the eligibility are on the Trinity website, the address given there. And so it's not based on passports. You might have a non-EU passport, but if you've been studying or working in the EU for enough time in the recent past, you would still be eligible for the EU fee. Okay, so further information. So I plan to give what I'm calling a masterclass in a few weeks. And what I'm going to do is give a lecture around the first week's video lecture. So I'll basically bring up the slides from that first week's video lecture and talk around them. So that's all about summary statistics and graphing data. If you are registered for this webinar, then you'll get an email about that once the time is confirmed, and you're very welcome to attend. The idea is just to give you a sort of slightly more detailed idea of the sort of material that the program offers. Of course, the course website contains more information about all aspects of the program, and you can email me directly or the course, either of those two email addresses, if you have any other query. Okay, so with apologies for some technical hitches, that ends the presentation. So what I might do next is invite perhaps Joan to say a few words about why she took the program. So Joan Cahill is actually a member of staff here in Trinity College. And she's been taking the program this year. So Joan, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Just hello everyone that's online. So my name is Joan Cahill. I'm a principal investigator at the School of Psychology, but thus far my research was mostly qualitative. So I decided to take this course to improve my understanding of statistical analysis. And I had some familiarity with basic statistics, but very, very little really. And I suppose the main comments that I would like to make is that I am so pleased that I took the course. I think you can have learning at any point in your career, at any stage in life. And on a personal level, it was a great thing to do, firstly. It opened up a whole area. It was exciting and I found it interesting. And I felt good about learning something new. In terms of the actual commitment to the course and the work and what was covered, it's always hard to gauge how much and how long it's going to take you. So even if you get something indicative and it says this is 10 hours commitment, for some it might be a lot less. It could be 5 hours, and for others it could be 15 hours. So there's always a range there. For me, with my own work commitments and family commitments, you know, I tried to keep up each week. It certainly was demanding, but it was manageable. I think the main thing that I would suggest to any students who decide to do this course is to try and keep up with it each week. And it is an online course, so you don't have to attend and there's no checking of attendance. So the tendency is possibly to, you know, if you're having a busy week or 2 weeks, is do nothing. But what I think with this course is it continuously builds on the past lesson. So you do need to stay engaged. And the online access is handy. You know, you can review the tutorial contents if you can't attend, but certainly if you do the tasks that are assigned for each week, and even if you fall behind, to catch up on those, because all of the assessment is linked to that. And that, for anyone who has a busy life, it's an easy way to kind of keep the focus. But it's a wonderful course. And the other reason that I did it is that I was always interested in regression. So if anybody who, you know, wants to look at regression and have it all demystified, I'd highly recommend it. I was really thrilled to study some regression, and I've been using it straight away. And in fact, once you get cracking in the course, you will find yourself using it in your research quite quickly. So it has very direct impact. You know, I've taken other courses and it hasn't had that kind of immediate impact, or you know, but this certainly does. I'm not sure there's much else I can say, Simon. No, that's very positive on the course, and I would recommend it. And that's entirely genuine, because for me, I really enjoyed it and I've benefited from it.
Well, thanks, Joan. Yeah, that's hopefully very useful for people. Peter, do you want to say a few words about your reasons for doing it and experiences on it and so on?
Yeah, of course. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, that's cool. So my name is Peter Kingston, as John said. Hi to everyone. I work as an economist for a private company. I'd actually been to Trinity probably, I think it was 7 years previously. But I did the course partially as a refresher for some of the elements that I'd studied before, but also to sort of dive deeper in some of the regression elements. And also, I had never learned the statistical package OR before. I had used Stata, and I see someone who mentioned that in the chat. When I was in college, we were using Stata, and just when I'm in work or any sort of potential jobs that I see, Stata is named less and less, whereas OR seems to be mentioned more. So that was one of the main motivations for me to learn. I live in Galway, and so doing an online course was quite handy for me because I wouldn't have been able to attend in person. And then my work schedule was like 9 to 6, Monday to Friday, so it was handy to have this sort of part-time evening course. As Joan said, like it very much depends on how quickly you get it or your background before. Some elements could be, as John said, if they say 10 hours a week, not so 10 hours. If they say 10 hours a week, some people get it done a lot quicker. Some people take a bit longer to catch on. What I will say is in the second half of the year in particular, it's very much more project based. And if you haven't been sort of doing the work each week, it can quite quickly get on top of you because you know there's a deadline for a project, whereas if you haven't been doing the work before, then you have to catch up with that and then do the project. The projects themselves are very interesting. You sort of get like a data set and be told to sort of look into the data and try and find any issues that are with it, or find relationships between variables. This is the one about education levels and sort of the impact of different variables on education outcomes. I find that sort of thing very interesting. Yeah, no, I'd recommend the course for anyone who is very interested in statistics or downside regression. It's very well run. I experienced with Blackboard in the past, which the whole module or the whole course is run through, and it's very easy to work your way through it. If you miss any of the lectures or the tutorials, Simon said they're recorded and you can go back to your own pace. So it's quite flexible in that sense.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, as you say, I think there are some people who actually attend more than one of the live tutorials because they feel like they get something different out of the different teaching staff that do it, and of course you're fully welcome to do that. So thanks, Peter. I know there are questions coming in on the chat. So what I'm going to propose now is, of course, we'll try and answer as many questions as we can, either myself or Peter or Joan. So please feel free to post a question to the chat or raise your hand, and I'll try and keep an eye out on the participant list for anyone who's raised their hand, and that's another way you can ask a question. So just looking at the chat now, I think the first question is from Mary. Can you recommend a book, course, etc. on maths to look at over the summer? Right, that's a good question. So I mean, I'd have to get back to you on a specific book, but really any book that was recommended, let's say for the Irish Leaving Certificate in Mathematics or the A-level in Mathematics or equivalent is probably going to be enough. Well, will be enough in fact. The main topics I think are important are the ideas of a function, calculus, so differentiation and integration, and something around matrices and vectors. Peter and Joan, I don't know if there's anything else you feel like your maths knowledge was tested on.
Yeah, I think one thing to flag is that there's a lot of background theoretical explanation in the course, and it shows you the maths, and this is what underpins it. But you don't have to reproduce that yourself as part of the coursework. So it's just to have the foundation, and it's very good to understand the maths behind it, and it's helpful, but you don't need to be able to reproduce that and you're not assessed on that. So if that was the barrier for someone, they're thinking the maths, I think you could probably get by with very basic maths. you know, and you wouldn't have to be a Leaving Cert whiz at maths anyway.
So I'm going to switch on my video again. Apologies, I had it switched off as I didn't want any further technical hitches as I ran the presentation, but we'll try the video back on again now. So next question from Mairead, is there an option to use Starter on this course? Right, so this is actually a question. There was some debate when we were creating this program as to what statistical package to use, and our main worry was that things like Starter are obviously commercial packages for which you need a license. Now that was fine when you came onto campus because Trinity has a license for them and you could just use the software in the labs here. But it was a little more difficult if you were outside of the campus, as almost everyone now is. So in the end, we decided to go with R, which is an open source package, so completely free to use and has an enormous library of statistical methods that you then have access to. The negative is that it's it's a little bit of a programming language, so it's not as user-friendly as things like Starter and Minitab and so on. So there's definitely a bit of a learning curve there. But I've actually been pleasantly surprised that everyone this year has really seemed to have taken on board. I really was expecting this to be one of the big problems in the first year we ran it, that people just got confounded by R, but that doesn't seem to have happened. So I'm quite encouraged by that. But having said that, of course, there's no reason why you can't use these methods yourselves. Once you've learned in this program the statistical methods, of course all these methods can be implemented in things like Starter, I think, relatively easily. So there's nothing stopping you doing that, but that's not part of the course. So Adam asks, what programs do you use to teach the first module? Okay, so what happens is what we do is we interweave the sessions of the first and second modules. So you do a few sessions of the first module, then you do one about R, and then you do a few more of the first module and so on. And in this way, you're not sort of left learning a lot of these statistical methods without the means to implement them. So they're kind of interwoven between each other in the first term. So we don't need to go to things like Excel until you picked up a bit of R. Could you also elaborate on the experimental design module, please? What is it for? Yeah, so we include this module because for a lot of people, particularly the researchers who take the program, they have to design an experiment to collect data to answer a particular question. And it's, speaking as a statistician, it's the easiest thing in the world to collect data the wrong way that subsequently you find really doesn't answer the question you wanted. So experimental design is all about how I can design an experiment to collect data that will answer the question that I actually wanted to answer. So that's why we include it. We feel that's a very important skill for a lot of the people who take the program. Is there Claire asks, is there a path for a diploma following the cert? Well, I'm really glad someone asked that question, as we are currently in the middle of developing a diploma, which would be a second year part-time to add on to the cert. So the idea is you could do the cert for a year, and then as it gets towards the end of that year, you could decide, well, that's enough for me, I'm going to exit and get my certificate, or you could carry on for another year part-time in the same manner and exit with a diploma. And then potentially we could offer then actually a third year. You could carry on for a third year if you wanted and do a dissertation part-time, and you could exit with a master's. So that's all in train. The hope is that that diploma will start in 23-24. So you wouldn't be able to carry on from having done the cert in the next academic year. You'd have to wait a year until the year 2 of the diploma was ready in 24-25. See what I mean? But we will allow people who've taken the cert, who take the cert next year, if they want, they can come back some subsequent time and take the second year of the diploma to get that diploma. What statistical programs are used on the course? Asked Catherine. So yeah, so R almost exclusively. I think in the experimental design module, the lecturer has also written some resources on using, I think it's Minitab.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And you can complete the assessment with Minitab R, or with flexibility there.
So there's some flexibility there in that last module, but otherwise it's it's using R. I should say the focus on using R is not so much on programming, very much. It's more on, right, well, this is what you do to make R run this statistical method. R will then spit out some output at you, and how do I interpret that output to tell me what's going on? Is there any group work involved in the degree? I don't think so.
Yeah, there was none.
Yeah, there's none. Yeah. So Joseph asks, I have a BSc in computing, specialized data analytics, PG data and financial analytics. Would this course be for me? Right. That's a good question. So, yeah, I'd have to have a look at I guess the syllabus of the degrees that you did to figure out if there's enough that's different to make it worth your while. Yeah, so the applied science, social data science program in Trinity has a module that's not a million miles from our first module, although I don't know if it uses R. But yeah, if you want to send me more details of the programs that you studied, I can maybe tell you, if there's anything in this cert that's different from what you've already done. Angeliki asks, as someone that is now a registered PhD student in Trinity, who's doing submitted September, do I fall under the EU fees category? Right, yeah, I really hesitate to answer yes or no about the EU fees question in case I'm held to it. That's a question that you can ask while you're aware of academic registry in Trinity. And actually, once you apply, and if your application is successful, the college will tell you this is what we think you're on. I mean, if you've been studying for full time for the last 4 years, let's say in the EU, then I think it's highly likely that you would qualify for EU fees. But I don't want to say for certain, because I know the rule has some subtleties to it. Audrey asks, how many weeks is the course? When does it finish? So it's 2 12-week semesters, so 24 weeks in total. So the first semester runs from sometime in September to early December, and then after that 12 weeks, there may be some examination a week or two later. Then the second semester runs sort of mid-January to early April. And again, you might have an exam a week or two after the end of the teaching. So you'll be completely done certainly by the end of April. In fact, this week is the exam meeting for the program, so everyone ought to get their results next week. So end of May, hopefully you can get your results. Could the course serve as a stepping out? So Robert asks, could the course serve as a stepping stone to further postgraduate programs in statistics? So yes, so I mentioned this diploma that we're trying to develop to start in 23-24. So that's an obvious one that you could do. There are various masters in data science and so on as well, both in Trinity and elsewhere, that the cert probably doesn't give you enough technical background to take a really sort of solid masters in data science, but the hope is that doing the diploma would allow that to happen. So Catherine asked, in the regression module, does the course cover mediation and moderation? I don't think so, at least not in the way I understand those terms. Yeah. So it's principally focused on what we call least squares regression, sort of fitting straight lines to data, for want of a better phrase. Miriam asks, do you know when in September the course starts? Okay, I can very quickly look that up. I think the academic calendar for next year is set in Trinity. Let me quickly look that up. So it looks like the first, let me see, it's usually mid-September sometime. So the first week of teaching will start the 12th of September, 2022. So that means we would release the first content on the Friday before, which would be the 9th of September, 2022. The first content would be released to you, the program. So Angeliki actually come back to me. Oh no, sorry, I think I skipped a question here. Yeah, so Sergio asks, could you expand a little bit on the types of assessment? Right, so Peter and Joan can correct me if I'm wrong, since I don't have to do the assessment, thankfully. So it's a mixture of things. I think it's sort of little short projects where you're given a data set. You will have learned some statistical method, and then you'll be given a data set and go, okay, well, go away and analyze this data set and give me some conclusions about a certain question. That's largely the work, and those projects can be smaller to larger in size.
Of the 4 modules, Simon, there's only one that has an exam, and that's right. The first one.
First one, yeah.
For that, actually, you do need to be able to undertake like ANOVAs and t-tests and chi-squared manually. Mm-hmm. So you need to, it's open book, you can have the formulas, but you need to be able to implement it. You're not allowed to do it in OR. Oh, right, but you've learned at that point to do it both ways. Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
For the 3 other modules, it's fully continuously assessed. And that's something to bear in mind, because you're, depending on the type of work you do, or if you have a PhD to submit, you're going all the way through. There's no real downtime. Would you agree, Peter? It's kind of fairly unrelenting.
And particularly I think it's the bigger module in the second term.
Yeah, the regression but it's great.
Yeah, there's projects, and then there's weekly sort of online tests, like 10 questions, and that's worth, I think, a couple of percent each. Yes. And you keep doing them.
Yeah, so the first one is assessed 100% by an exam. The second one, which is a 5 module, that's 2, it seemed to have 2 assessments, and one was small, getting your head around OR. And the second one was, implementing something that was relevant to your own research in OR. And that gave you loads of scope. So for me, I do research in mental health. So I had a survey and I was able to run a number of tests. So it was linked into my work, and that was great. And I was delighted. And if you don't have data sets, there's available data sets that you can use, so that's not a concern. And so you do find yourself learning OR quite quickly. Then the third one, which is regression, there's I think there was 2 small projects, 5 MCQs, and then 1 big project. So there was a lot of assessment, but all the assessment built, on what was being done in class. So there was no huge surprises. So if you could get your head around what was in class and in the examples, you were really replicating that. But for that one, there was prescribed data sets, so you couldn't use your own research. And for me, I was like, I thought, I'm going to do a lot of regression related to my own research. Just be aware of that seemed to use external sort of data sets and fix for everybody. And then the fourth one, there was 2 small projects and 1 big project, the experimental design, but they weren't that big at all. So really, there's only 1 exam before Christmas, and the rest is continuous assessment.
Just to add to that, the one that Joan said, that you sort of come up with your own data, and Joan used stuff from her research. I wasn't able to use any of my data from my work because it's all confidential. I wouldn't have been able to share it. But there are websites online where you can, and so you'll be given them during the course, where you can download data sets of interest to you. So I found some on heart disease, one on it was about cricket, the ages of players, and I can't remember what the third one was at the moment. But like there are sources out there. If you aren't studying in Trinity already and you aren't able to use any data from your work, there's sources.
Or you could engage with a conversation with your employer around de-identifying some of the data, which you'd need to do, and do that in advance before you start the course, because that could take a few months. And I think some people, the assessment came and you mightn't have known that this was possible and you wanted to do it, but you mightn't have had time to actually get that over the line, whether it was looking at your own research or equally data that was through your employment that was protected in some way. So if you had that in mind, I would set that wheel in motion now, and then it'll be very beneficial for your work.
Okay, thanks, Alice. Yep. Okay. Adam asks, is there a minimum hardware requirement for the device to run the stats programs? So I would say I have a 4-year-old laptop, which is more than sufficient. the R software is updated extremely regularly, so I'm guessing the requirement to run it is also changing and getting more and more. But yeah, any reasonably up-to-date laptop, and by that I mean anything that's less than 4 or 5 years old, I think will be perfectly fine. Obviously, we're not, we're never asking you to analyze, enormous gigabytes of data where the speed of your machine is starting to become important. And the R program itself is quite large, but again, it's a large number of megabytes. I think it's not 20 gigabytes or anything like that. So Angeliki just came back to me, about fees and whether she would fall into the no fees category. I don't think you would, unfortunately. So it's a question of being registered in Trinity for the year in which you take the program. So it sounds like if you submit in September, I guess that's a slightly grey area as to whether you're technically registered. Yeah, that's something that I guess academic registry would make a decision on as to whether you would be eligible or not. I haven't come across a case like that before where you're sort of submitting and trying to do the program at the same time. Catherine writes, I'm currently doing a master's in psychology, but we use only SPSS. I haven't used R yet. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the focus of the program really is very much on the statistical methods and and what they are and what they do. All of these methods can be implemented quite easily in SPSS, and I would imagine that there is lots of resources to help you do that if that's the program that you use. It's just in this program, we use R, but the output from R and from SPSS is often extremely similar. So in terms of interpreting the output, it still would be very useful. A lot of people this year had not come across R before. And as I said, I was pleasantly surprised actually at the fact that everyone managed to install it without any hitches and then use it and find it perfectly reasonable to use. Okay. I think we might have got to the end of our questions. I know, Joan, you have to leave quite shortly, and we've taken up more time than we deserve from you. I would say to anybody, if you have any further questions, and of course, please feel free to email me, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I'll also hopefully send out quite soon a note on this class that I'm going to give, again over Zoom, where I essentially just give the lecture from the first session to give you a better idea of the sort of material that you have in the program. Okay, well, thanks very much to Peter and Joan for coming on and answering questions. It's very much appreciated. And thanks to everybody else for attending. And I hope to see you on the program next year.
Thanks, everyone.